The man never believed in the story people tell about seeing a light at the end of a tunnel when they almost die. But now, he finds himself in such a tunnel. He wonders how he died, as the last thing he remembers was being in his room, heavy and tired. He starts thinking about how he might have died. He remembers looking down at the city from high up, but then his memory fades to feeling heavy in bed. He questions if he was poisoned or assassinated, knowing too many people wanted him dead. He thinks about all the enemies he had, realizing that after all, he was a king. This realization brings up the title card for the story, the beginning after the end, showing the creative team details. Even though he wants to figure out his death, he decides there is no use dwelling on it now and must just go along with whatever happens next. He hopes it's not some cliché scene with singing babies. Suddenly, bright light surrounds him, and he hears voices congratulating his sir and madam because they have a healthy boy. He realizes with shock that he has just been born. A woman asks someone to hold him out so she can see. The man briefly thinks if the light at the end of the tunnel was actually the light from a woman's, but stops himself, deciding that is not important. He notices that wherever he is, he can understand the language, which is a good sign. He observes the mother's bright, gentle smile and motherly love, thinking how beautiful she is. The father refers the baby's love to the mother can the baby shift the father quickly says, "Never mind." The former king thinks his surroundings seem normal enough, but he is confused about where he is. The scene shifts to show the interior of a rustic room lit by a single candle. He notices various objects around the room, like armor pieces on the floor, and wonders what is happening. He sees his mother holding him and focusing her eyes. He wonders where he is as the next shot shows a view of a simple, thatched roof building from above, surrounded by greenery. Time passes as weeks go by slowly. He observes his new parents, Alice and Reynolds. His mother, Alice, is gentle but keeps tight control over the family, while his father, Reynolds, is dependable and charismatic except for his occasional childishness. Despite being born into a loving family, his new life is full of difficulties he wouldn't wish on anyone, mainly the lack of control over his limbs and bodily functions. He thinks that years of mental discipline as a king and the slight hope that this is all a dream are what keep him sane. It seems he has been transported to the past, to a much more old-fashioned time period as he looks out over a town with older-style buildings. Walking through the market, he sees people carrying weapons openly and vendors selling strange liquids called medicines. His mother suggests they head home because their little Art must be tired, and the baby, realizing knowledge is strength, feels confident about his surroundings after a few weeks of observation. The father comes home happily and asks how his little man is doing, picking up the baby with a big stretch and smile. The father playfully tosses the baby up high, causing the mother to scream in alarm, asking what he is doing and warning him not to drop the child. The baby, despite the shock, feels his fragile body reacting, and the father laughs, saying he used to do this when he was younger, telling the mother the little boy is having fun. The father continues tossing and catching the baby roughly, making the baby dizzy and causing the mother to yell at him to stop. The father is then shown looking stunned. The father makes a strange choking sound, and the baby finally starts crying loudly with a harsh sound. The mother quickly takes the crying baby, comforting him and saying he is okay and that she will fix him up. She gently touches the baby's foot, and a green light glows from her hand onto him, making the baby look surprised as she says, "There, all better." As the mother holds him up happily, the baby reflects that he spoke too soon, realizing he still knows nothing about this new world. In his past life, the character was a king, standing proudly on the castle walls. He remembers leading armies and winning duels against people from all over the world. Even with all those great achievements, he states that nothing made him prouder than this current moment. Now, looking at his cute baby self, he is very happy, thinking he can crawl. The baby, Art, starts crawling, making his parents, Alice and Ray, immediately rush to look after him. Ray is told to watch out for corners, and Alice is asked to stop him from going near his shelf. Art looks at his reflection in the mirror and his mother lovingly points it out. He thinks about how his new name, Art, still feels too cute for a former king like him. However, looking at his adorable baby face, he admits to himself that he is indeed very cute, warning future ladies to prepare to be heartbroken. The parents laugh at his silly face in the mirror, and then the title card for the beginning after the end appears, showing the creators' names. After his mother kisses him goodnight, calling him Little Art, the baby boy's mission begins with a cheerful start. Art carefully sets aside his blanket and throws it to make noise, then rests his head quietly before starting to rumble around. With a big bam, Art pops up from the bed, and now that Alice, his mother, thinks he is asleep, he gets ready for his secret activity. He knows he has about an hour before she comes back to check on him. As Art crawls away, his mother is heard humming softly, thinking he is sleeping, but Art is focused on reaching his destination. He whispers that full speed is ahead as he peeks out from a hiding spot. He successfully reaches a desk filled with books and papers, exclaiming success. With a happy baby grin, he explains that ever since he found this secret spot, he sneaks out every night to learn more about this new world called Pikathan. The map shows the continent is made up of 3 major kingdoms. The first kingdom shown is Elenwar, the land of the elves, deep in the forests. Next is Darv, the underground kingdom of the dwarves. The third one is Sapin, the human kingdom, which is the most populated area. He notes that both this world and his old one have monarchies, but here, rule is passed down instead of earned. Art found out early that this world is much less developed than his old one technologically, and he realizes the reason is magic. He spots the book he was reading before and thinks, here it is. He opens the book to the page he was on, thinking he left off right there in his studies of magic. He recalls that in his old world, they used a life force called Kai, which practitioners used to strengthen their bodies through hard training. This world has a similar force called mana, but unlike Kai, mana is all around them. The power to control mana is mostly genetic, with only about 1 in 100 children having the ability. Art gets a little rash on his cheek while reading this. He continues reading that mana can be used in many ways, the most common being augmenting and conjuring. Augmenters use mana to make their bodies much stronger and faster, but their reach is limited. Conjurers, on the other hand, send mana out into the world to control things around them, but they need to use mana from the outside world to fuel their spells. His mother was a rare type of mage called a deviant or an emitter, known for unique restorative mana. The book states that a mage's first awakening happens between early adolescence and late teenage years when their mana core appears, which sounds a lot like the Kai Center from his past life. To form a Kai Center, kids in his old world meditated to gather the fragments of Kai inside them. Thinking about this, Art wonders if he can do something similar now, and he closes his eyes in meditation, surrounded by faint green motes of energy. He concentrates hard and a bright light forms in his chest as he focuses, realizing it's working. Suddenly, Art grabs something and is interrupted as his mother, Alice, finds him, looking worried. She asks if he is having trouble doing a poo-pie. Art is very upset, proclaiming he was about to start his journey to become the greatest mage, but his parents are focused on his diaper situation. He sighs, realizing that in all his concentration he had actually soiled his diaper. The mother is writing something in her study, surrounded by many books on the shelves. She takes a moment to look at her surroundings, thinking about her baby. She dips her quill in the ink pot and continues writing in her journal. After a little while, she notes that it has been just over 2 years now. She feels like she is learning more and more about her baby every day that passes. Then, she thinks about what conclusion she has reached as a man, presumably the father, smiles below. The father holds up the baby Arthur, who looks very happy and adorable. The mother then thinks that Arthur has to be the most favorable baby. She looks at Arthur, noticing his little patch of auburn hair and his azure eyes that look at her very intelligently. Because of this, she knows he will get into trouble in the future if she does not become a strict and dependable mother. She realizes that she cannot rely on Ray for being strict, as a hand is shown swinging a wooden stick quickly. Then, the scene shifts back to the mother carrying a basket of clothes. Mother, holding laundry, looks shocked as she sees Ray outside trying to teach little Arthur how to fight with a stick. She seems quite upset about this small training session between father and son. As Ray and Arthur seem to be enjoying their little fight practice, the mother appears behind them with a very angry look on her face, radiating a dark aura. She is clearly furious that Ray is encouraging this behavior. She writes in her journal, recounting that she caught Ray trying to teach her baby how to fight. Her expression softens a little as she notes this happened even when Arthur could barely crawl. The narration continues, setting the scene for a trip outside the house. The next moment shows a clear blue sky, hinting at them leaving the study environment. The mother is now out in the town of Ashbur, carrying Arthur with another person, possibly a guard or an older sibling, nearby. They are walking past buildings, and a sign with crossed swords and a shield catches the eye. She observes that Arthur absolutely loves going to the small merchant's strip in central Ashbur. Because of this, they go downtown every other day instead of just once or twice a week for groceries. Arthur looks with wide eyes as Ray demonstrates some kind of power with his staff, making it burst into flames. The mother, standing by, says she is not smiling at him. Then Ray creates a big fiery blast. The mother smiles softly, thinking about how quickly Arthur is growing up and wondering what he will be like when he is older. She then writes again, saying that with Ray as his father, she has no doubt he will be interested in becoming an adventurer. However, she expresses worry about this potential future, as adventurers have a tough life. She hopes he fares better than the naive young teens who hope to make it big as adventurers. She wishes she could do something about Arthur's constant habit of sneaking into the study. She even thinks about moving his crib into the study, but decides that is a thought for another day. The scene cuts back to the study, where a hand is seen wiping the table with a cloth. A feather quill is also shown being picked up or put down. This part shows the title card for the beginning after the end, along with credits for the novel, script, artists, and quality control. A final shot shows the mother standing near the desk again. The scene shifts to young Arthur standing by a bright window, looking out. He has a small, thoughtful expression on his face. Ray takes off his outer layers, showing his arms, as he prepares for something. The narration states that approximately 2 years have passed since he first made his difficult journey to the study. Ray reflects that he has learned a lot since then, but it is still fascinating learning new things every day. Arthur is seen peeking from a doorway, watching Ray intently. He stands with his arms spread wide, focusing on the ground in front of him, where small rocks are scattered. One of the rocks slowly begins to lift off the ground. Ray concentrates hard, and the air around him seems to vibrate with power as the rocks continue to be affected. Arthur looks on with surprise, wondering what sort of magical phenomenon he will conjure. Rocks shoot upwards with a loud sound, and Arthur stares up in shock at the chaos above him. He is clearly taken aback by the display of power. The strong man was showing off his power in the yard, making rocks float in the air with a grand gesture. Then he dropped into a low stance, ready for action. He launched himself forward with a huge roar, landing hard on the grass with a puff of dirt. The little kid watching from inside looked totally unimpressed by the whole display. The father came inside, smiling proudly at his wife, who looked on with a knowing expression. He then boasted about his power, feeling like a star. He then puffed out his chest, asking if the child saw how awesome his daddy was. But the kid, looking small and annoyed, questioned the point of throwing something with so little effort after just 3 minutes of focus. The mother gently petted the child's head while he watched his father. She then sighed and said that the father had ruined the front yard again. Meanwhile, outside, the father was seen pulling something with great force, showing off his raw strength in the grass. He was putting all his might into this pulling action. The mother looked at her baby, who was watching her with big, innocent eyes. The child then started wondering what kind of manhwa he would have when it finally awakened. The father stood tall and firm outside, focused, while a single leaf drifted down near his feet. He seemed ready for anything. The small leaf kept floating down, landing gently on the ground with a soft tap. It was a stark contrast to the rough display happening elsewhere. The father's gaze sharpened, and he suddenly threw a punch with intense speed. A powerful rush of air followed the blow. The punch moved incredibly fast, followed by powerful kicks that created streaks of air distortion. He was really putting on a show of force. The impact landed with a loud thud, showing the sheer force of his movement. His face showed a look of exertion and surprise at his own strength. Finally, he landed flat on his back with a loud whoosh, ending his aggressive display. Back inside, the mother took a quick sip from her cup, seemingly unimpressed by the commotion. The little boy peeked out, looking curious about the outside world for a moment before resting his head down, his eyes closing peacefully for a nap. He looked incredibly cute while resting. The child was then shown sitting up in a dark room, looking at a tiny flying bug. Later, the mother was sitting downstairs, and the boy was looking up at her from the steps. The boy suddenly felt scared, looking up into the dark space above him with wide, anxious eyes as a sound echoed down. He seemed very frightened of something high up. He looked down with a worried expression, his mother's shadow visible near his feet on the floorboards. He was clearly feeling very uneasy. The boy slowly crawled up the stairs towards his mother, his body shaking slightly with fear. His mother looked down at him with a gentle, concerned expression. She noticed his sleepy state, telling him his eyes were half closed. "Baby." Then she kissed his head, saying it looked like someone needed a nice nap. She held the little boy close as he settled into her arms. He then pointed and asked for books, but she gently told him no, that it was nap time. She smiled and offered maybe after the nap, but the boy decided he had no choice but to resist being put to sleep. He pushed against the cover to stay awake. The child then made an adorable, sparkling face, begging his mama for books. His intense cuteness made the mother's eyes pop, and she seemed almost overwhelmed. She pushed back against his playful resistance with a surprised shout. Then, the mother groaned in frustration as the child kept stubbornly pushing against her. Finally giving in, the mother agreed, okay, you can play in the study for a little bit. She then turned away, muttering that she was not a doting mother, but that boys his age needed a lot of play, so she had baby-proofed the room. The child thought to himself that it wasn't demeaning for a great warrior to use every tool in his arsenal, even using his cuteness. He was then shown sitting in the study, looking at an open book. The mother stood near the doorway, watching him with a soft smile. Then, there was a sudden loud crash from somewhere else. The mother rushed out, worriedly saying, "Oh no, your father better not have knocked down another tree." She told the boy she would be right back. Art. The perspective shifted to the child focusing internally, realizing that his biggest achievement, besides learning about this world, was his progress in forming his Ma core. He was shown sitting cross-legged in meditation. The baby was sitting in concentration, a small glow forming in his chest while reading a book. He had spent the last 2 years moving countless tiny fragments of mana inside his body. He was gathering all these fragments near his solar plexus, a process he realized would naturally take until adolescence due to the slow movement of the mana fragments toward his body's center. He was clearly very focused. The view then pulled back to show the bright blue sky outside, contrasting with the dark room where he was meditating. He knew the effort was tiring for both mind and body. He continued to focus, recognizing that these 2 years had not been wasted at all. He was shown concentrating deeply, a faint glow on his chest. He declared that he was almost there, right at the edge of success. A bright, intense light filled the space, signifying a breakthrough. Outside, the father was struggling to carry a huge log while the little girl watched, smiling happily. Then 2 birds flew high in the clear blue sky. He focused on achieving that just one last piece. The scene dissolved into darkness, showing several bright, gathering points of light within. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the area with a huge boom, throwing debris everywhere. The mother was thrown back by the force of the blast. The focus snapped to the father moving incredibly fast, dashing away from the explosion. He was seen pulling the mother and child with him in a speedy escape. With an intense SSSSHHH sound, the father shielded his family as they shot forward, engulfed in a blinding golden light from the explosion behind them. He was moving at an incredible speed to protect them. Someone quickly dashed forward, moving so fast like a streak of light, trying to save someone from a bright flash. A man managed to grab a woman just as a huge explosion or bright light burst nearby, showing he took the brunt of something to protect her. The motion blurs show a huge burst of energy or speed, with the man protecting the woman as they went through the impact. After the blinding light faded, smoke or fog started clearing up, and some glowing particles floated in the air. The man, looking a bit beaten up, held the seemingly shocked or unconscious woman close and asked if she was okay, calling her honey. Woman slowly came to, called out for Art, and then screamed Art. Again with wide, shocked eyes. She shouted that Art was still there and reached out, confirming the boy was safe despite the destruction. A close look at the man's face showed his eyes wide with shock or surprise, even though he had cuts on his face. The focus shifts back to movement, with a dash sound effect as if someone is moving with extreme speed again. The injured man dashed forward into the wreckage, pushing aside debris under a bright yellow sky. The scene fades to black with only a few glowing embers floating down, suggesting the immediate danger has passed, but destruction is all around. Suddenly, a dark figure grabbed the man by the neck, making a loud crack sound, implying a struggle or pain. The man looked up with a desperate expression, his eyes wide, just before another intense light flash hits. The man stood there, looking stunned, his clothes torn and his face showing confusion after the intense moment. The man stumbled and fell with a heavy thud, then started breathing heavily, letting out shaky laughs. He looked up to the sky with a look of relief or slight disbelief, sweat on his face. The woman rushed over, asking Reynolds what was wrong, clearly worried, while Reynolds seemed to be laughing in disbelief, mentioning that their son wasn't even 3 yet. The woman looked up with a worried expression, thinking that Art was already showing signs of something big. The focus moves up to show a very small, young child sitting calmly amidst the wooden wreckage, seemingly unaffected. The scene shows the little boy sitting in a cross-legged meditative posture surrounded by the broken wood from what must have been their house. The woman gently put her hands on the man's back, supporting him after the ordeal. The little boy, Art, stood up lightly and thought to himself, "Wow, I feel great." He clenched his small fist and realized, so this is what it feels like to have a mana core. Art then spread his arms wide, feeling the world around him, and exclaimed, "Even the trees look greener." The young boy happily wondered about the trees, while the background showed close-ups of the destroyed wooden structure. Suddenly, the boy paused, realizing something was off as he looked down at the massive destruction around him. He started questioning what happened, asking, "What the hell?" and then wondered aloud if they were attacked, even calling out, "Who dares destroy the home of a king?" The chapter title card for the beginning after the end appears, along with the credits for the story, artist, and colorist. The story jumps forward in time, showing the young Art resting on his bed, and then a text box explains that a lot has happened in the past year besides rebuilding their house. It is explained that along with his mother teaching him to read and write, he has also been learning the basics of manipulation and augmentation. Since his body was too small for sparring at first, they did basic body workouts, which is shown by his father running powerfully. Art followed his father, but soon his father stopped and tended to the exhausted little boy on the ground. The narration continues that not too long ago, his father finally thought he was ready to practice with a wooden sword he got for his 3rd birthday. A glowing wooden sword is shown, suggesting the start of real training. Art is then seen lying down, focused intently on a book, trying to study. His father burst in, full of energy, telling him it was time to train and that he had the sword ready. Art, interrupted, seemed to hide his face under a piece of paper indicating he didn't want to stop studying. Outside, his father reminded him of what he was taught, holding a simple stick as a practice weapon. The father instructed Art to match the mana flow with his breathing, saying the core is just another organ, but Art internally doubted if most 4-year-olds could grasp such abstract ideas. Art then focused, holding his small wooden sword, while his father watched with encouragement. The little boy glared with intense focus and swung his wooden sword with surprising speed. The stick hit the father with 2 distinct sounds, a thwack and then a solid thump as the connection was made. The father was repeatedly hit by Art's swings, with whack sounds emphasizing the rapid, unexpected strikes. Art kept swinging, and his father encouraged him, saying he thought he could do it. Art gritted his teeth, thinking he wouldn't get any rest until he finished this training, and he also only had a little time before dinner to study. The small boy took a determined stance, gripping his wooden sword tightly, ready for the next move. The focus zooms in on Art's determined eyes, followed by a calmer look from his father. Art swung again with a shout, and the resulting impact was powerful, making a smash sound as it connected with his father. The force of the blow sent the father reeling back slightly, with a tee-woo sound effect. Father managed to block the next move with the stick, making a thud as it hit the ground near Art. Art, slightly annoyed but determined, asked his father if he could go study now, to which his father reluctantly agreed. The scene shifts to a quiet room with bright sunlight coming through a window. Art sat meditating on his bed, and the narration explained that in this world, strength is judged by the color of one's mana core. An illustration shows a generic body with a black core in the chest, explaining that the mana core starts black because of blood and impurities mixing with mana particles. It is explained that the core gets purer as impurities are filtered out over time, showing a blurry reddish core, and starting the list with black. The core evolution sequence is shown: red, orange, yellow, and silver. Finally, the purest level, white, is shown, and the text states that each stage is divided into 3 shades: dark, solid, and light. Another figure is shown with a bright, pure core glowing in the chest, representing the ultimate power. The narrator concludes that the lighter the mana core, the purer and more powerful it is, just as Art gets an idea and shouts "I" at her tilde in frustration. Art gets upset when someone calls him for dinner, muttering curses as he doesn't want to stop his practice or study. The scene moves to the dinner table, showing a plate with some vegetables and meat, and a glass of water. The mother is shown trying to eat, making clicking sounds with her spoon and glass, looking a bit stressed. Art internally complains that he can't get any alone time because he needs to learn, asking how else he is supposed to learn. Art struggles with his fork and spoon against the food, still making loud clink sounds, while someone calls out "honey." The father, looking serious after the dinner sounds, states that he thinks it's time they get Art a proper mentor. Arthur's mother was quite shocked, shouting that Arthur was only 4 years old. She argued with Reynolds, reminding him that he promised to teach their son, and even pointed out some strange carrot-like figures yelling. The intensity of the argument was high, with a bright golden light showing the power involved in the disagreement. Reynolds, looking determined, shouted that this was exactly what he meant, suggesting the situation needed action. Meanwhile, some small green creatures with swords and helmets seemed to be defeated by a much larger, armored figure. Reynolds' companion then explained that he never thought his 4-year-old son would be such a natural at mana manipulation, feeling like he was holding the boy back because of his huge potential. A massive golden explosion happened, clearing the air and showing the impact of the recent events. The woman looked up, seemingly shielded by the light, while many small figures ran away from the powerful blast. She then declared firmly that she would not let her child leave home to go to a city hundreds of miles away. Over dinner, Reynolds insisted that Xyrus was not just any city and promised his friend would take good care of their son, while young Arthur sighed, clearly finding the adult talk tiring. The parents continued to argue, with confused scribbles coming from their speech bubbles, before a loud thump showed someone hitting the table in frustration. Both parents looked at each other with serious, worried faces in the dark, nighttime setting. Reynolds then looked directly at Arthur, asking if he wanted to go to a big city to have a real teacher, giving him a say in the decision. Arthur was surprised that he, a 4-year-old, was being asked to decide something so big, thinking it was too much for his age. After swallowing hard, Arthur asked if his mommy and daddy could come too, so they could all meet the teacher together. The parents looked at each other, clearly having not considered taking everyone along. Arthur started worrying if he had said something wrong or if his question was too complicated for them to understand. His parents then laughed, admitting they hadn't thought about all of them traveling together, and his mother suggested she would feel better if she was there when Arthur was tested and met his teacher. With that, the mother happily declared that it looked like they were all going to Xyrus City. Right after that decision, Reynolds slammed his hands down on the table in excitement, breaking things, while Arthur narrated that he was shocked to hear them preparing for the 3-week journey immediately. The story breaks here for the chapter title card, showing the beginning after the end against a starry blue background. Later, as Arthur was tucked in, he thought he saw some important information written somewhere in a book he was looking at. His mother came in telling him he needed to go to bed because they were leaving early the next day, while Arthur looked tired holding his book. Arthur was shocked at how soon they were leaving, but his mother explained that his dad's old friends from the Twin Horns group were taking them to Xyrus. His mom explained that his dad was already with them, and they were taking the family along, which made Arthur look up curiously. Mother confirmed that the Twin Horns were taking them and gave Arthur a gentle kiss goodnight, explaining his dad was already with the group. She warned Arthur not to stay up reading again but said he could bring books for the trip, before telling him to go to sleep. Arthur agreed and wished his mom good night, receiving a sweet dreams, honey. In return, Arthur reflected in the dark, starry view, knowing that the Twin Horns had been around the area for some time. He remembered they had even helped rebuild their home when they had a chance. Arthur recalled hearing that this travel party had 2 conjurers and 3 augmenters in it. He felt that having them around would help with any trouble they might run into on the way, feeling excited to finally be moving on from his small, quiet town. He was ready to see what this big world truly had to show him. The scene shifts to a bright, clear morning with rolling green hills under a vast blue sky. Arthur walked with his parents, heading out of their village nestled in the lush green mountains. The sun was bright as they left the immediate area, with someone reaching out from the front of the group. Arthur thanked the person leading the way for taking them on the trip to Xyrus. His father then called out to the group, telling everyone he wanted them to meet his son. Arthur's father told him to introduce himself, and Arthur politely said hello and stated his name, thanking them for bringing them to Xyrus. One person commented on how polite Arthur was, while another person seemed interested in his family connection. A quick flash showed a sharp knife, hinting at the nature of the people they were meeting. A red-haired man, identified as Adam Crench, an augmenter specializing in spears, asked Arthur if Reynolds was really his father. As Adam passed by, Arthur was startled by a sudden swoosh as someone grabbed him. A blonde woman named Angela Rose, a wind magic conjurer, squeezed Arthur tightly, saying he was too precious and that he thankfully looked more like his mother. Arthur couldn't breathe from the tight squeeze and felt his heart thumping hard, while his mother covered her face in embarrassment. Arthur's real mother cried out for Angela to stop because she was hurting him, making Angela look shocked. Durden Walker, an earth magic conjurer, then lifted the tiny Arthur up, holding him gently, while Angela looked on. Durden crouched down and patted Arthur gently, making comforting pat-pat sounds. Arthur smiled happily as Durden gave him an affectionate look, even with a dog's happy presence in the background. Arthur then looked towards another member of the group, Jasmine Flamesworth, an augmenter with dual daggers. Jasmine seemed to be standing above, possibly on something tall, and she gave a small nod to Arthur from a distance. As Jasmine moved towards a waiting carriage, someone told Arthur not to mind her, saying she just needed time to get used to him. Another woman extended her hand to Arthur, introducing herself as Helen Shard, an augmenter specializing in magic archery. Arthur happily took Helen's hand, greeting her politely. The man who seemed to be the leader excitedly announced that now that everyone had met, it was time to get ready to move on. He asked if everyone was ready for the journey to begin. Arthur's mother and sister leaned out of the carriage, confirming they were all good. With a command to "Let's go!" the group started moving, with lizard-like creatures pulling the wooden wagons. The creatures started their trot pulling the heavy load. Arthur leaned out of a window on the carriage, looking out with a happy, eager expression. The view ahead showed a vast landscape of mountains and valleys, signaling the start of their long trip. The chapter ends with a big declaration: "Let the journey begin." The sun sets beautifully, painting the sky with bright colors as the travel wagons rest for the night. Later that night, a fierce battle seems to be happening under the starry sky, with people fighting against wolf-like creatures. This intense fight concludes, and the group gathers around a campfire after their journey. A woman is seen roasting food over the fire, while Arthur, looking small, watches the scene. Everyone settles down by the fire, taking a rest from their travels. Arthur looks thoughtful, resting his chin on his hand, as a dark-haired woman asks him how he is holding up and if he is tired. Arthur quietly nods, still looking pensive, as the woman continues to eat her food. The woman tells him not to worry because it is his first time traveling like this, and Arthur meekly agrees. She then asks if his father has been bragging about him being a genius mage and if he really awakened his powers only a year ago, before telling him to sit. A man with red hair stands up and tells Reynolds that he needs to stretch a bit before sleeping. This man then asks Reynolds if it is okay if he spars a little with Arthur, which Arthur immediately rejects by telling him to stretch by himself. Reynolds agrees to let them spar but warns the redhead to be careful, mentioning they just started sparring with light strength and mana exercises. The redhead picks up little Arthur, who seems unhappy despite Reynolds' concern about Arthur's training level. Reynolds and his wife look on with concern as the redhead carries Arthur away into the dark forest area. Arthur thinks to himself that normal kids his age would struggle with just climbing stairs, but here, fighting seems normal for him. The redhead grins widely and asks Arthur if he is ready for their session. Arthur holds his wooden sword ready, making whooshing sounds as he prepares for a swing. The redhead brings his own weapon down and asks Arthur if he knows how to reinforce his weapon, as he is about to strike. The redhead swings his weapon hard, and Arthur seems ready to face the incoming attack. Suddenly, a huge, roaring tiger appears to confront the redhead, filling the screen with its massive face. The redhead just laughs confidently, unaffected by the sudden appearance of the tiger. Back at the camp, Arthur feels a strong connection with his father, who seems to be sensing the fight, making Arthur cringe. Arthur's father yells, telling someone to go get him, while Arthur feels helpless in his small body. Arthur mutters that it is useless, but then closes his eyes, deciding to face the challenge with a look of determination. A golden light shines brightly from a sword held up, illuminating a figure wearing a crown or helmet. Arthur, holding his small wooden sword, stands firmly against the imposing, armored figure holding the glowing sword above him. The armored figure grabs Arthur's hand, and Arthur is shown in silhouette, gathering his strength with his sword. A moment of intense speed is shown as Arthur dashes forward into the darkness. Arthur charges with a determined expression, moving quickly across the terrain. The redhead stands ready, holding his staff, with a knowing look on his face. Arthur dashes right toward the redhead's armored leg with his wooden sword. The redhead watches intently, prepared for the engagement. The redhead yells defend and blocks Arthur's wooden sword swing with his staff, creating a clash. With a quick move, the redhead manages to parry Arthur's attack. Arthur disappears in a poof of smoke right after his move, still holding his glowing sword. Close-up on the redhead's hand gripping his staff tightly. The redhead slips while moving, cursing his mistake. Arthur, looking angry, thinks about how frustrating his current weak body is. The redhead looks slightly surprised by Arthur's unexpected move. Arthur's wooden sword glows brightly as he prepares for another attack. Arthur swings his glowing sword with all his might. Arthur manages a slash attack, but the redhead counters it with a swift movement. Arthur barely dodges a counterattack from the redhead. Arthur is sent flying by a heavy blow that connects with him. The redhead's close-up shows his intense focus as Arthur is momentarily stunned. Arthur swings his weapon in a last-ditch effort. Arthur successfully dodges a powerful kick from the redhead. Arthur looks up, catching his breath, while the redhead regains his stance, ready to continue. The redhead stands over Arthur, staff ready, as Arthur is still on the ground. A visual representation of the staff being stabilized after the exchange. A massive impact, a whack, shows Arthur being hit by the staff in a circular burst of energy. The narrator recalls Newton's third law of motion at that moment. The law states, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. This reaction is visualized as a powerful downward force hitting the ground where Arthur is. The impact of the force is shown with streams of energy radiating outwards from the contact point. Arthur is sent flying upwards, landing hard on the ground with a thump. His mother cries out in alarm for Art, noting how much that opposite reaction must have hurt. Arthur is shown lying on the ground, clearly hurt from the force of the impact. Arthur is still in pain, while the redhead is slapped by a bearded man who calls him an idiot for hitting too hard. The bearded man tells the redhead that he never taught Arthur to fight, questioning what kind of hellish training made him such a monster. Arthur's father laughs and asks if that fighting style is what Arthur has been studying. Arthur sheepishly confirms that he learned it by watching his dad and reading books, which makes the redhead question the source of his knowledge. The redhead, despite the reprimand, tells Arthur that he still needs to teach him some of his movement techniques, to which the others nod in agreement. The redhead begins to explain the technique, describing the footwork needed for the move. He continues explaining the motion, which involves crossing the back leg over the front leg and kicking off with mana while almost falling, and Arthur seems to understand excitedly, causing the others to fall over in simple cartoon style. Arthur proudly claims he is almost there, kind of, but then the redhead fails the demonstration by crashing into a tree with a thump. Arthur looks at the downed redhead with surprise and asks how, while the redhead gives a thumbs up from behind the tree. A few days went by since the group started their trip towards Zyrus City. During this time, the main character's birthday also passed. He received a gift and some lessons for his birthday. There was a moment of fun training where someone splashed into the water, making a big splash. Two of the older companions seemed happy watching the activity. The training continued, and it was mentioned that Adam, Helen, and his father were making good progress. One person seemed to be forcefully pushed or thrown into the water during the training session. The splash was huge as someone landed right on top of the main character in the water. Surprisingly, Jasmine was picking up the new techniques very fast, which amazed the main character. The practice continued with rapid movements, and the young boy watched this fast action. The journey resumed, and the group was seen with their wagons, with Jasmine and Helen resting near them. His mother called out to Art, telling him it was time to leave now. The boy quickly replied that he was coming, as they looked towards the open sky and mountains. The scene showed their two wagons moving along a rough path, followed by a title card for the chapter. The wagons continued their slow journey over the rocky terrain, and then a close-up showed a large, clawed foot stepping onto the ground, making a cracking sound. One of the warriors started reminiscing about how the main character's father used to get them into trouble. Another person chimed in, mentioning that the boy wasn't the only one causing trouble, recalling an incident where he accidentally set something off. When asked what that incident was, the first warrior quickly brushed it off, saying it was just a little rodent. The main character checked on his mother, asking if she was okay, and she reassured him she was just a little tired. While his mother rested, the young boy held a book and looked around, noticing some strange papers nearby. He settled down to read his book seriously, focusing hard on the material. The boy looked increasingly stressed and worried while studying the book. Suddenly, a menacing purple aura appeared with intense eyes, demanding, "Teach me mu or tilde," from a small opening in the wood. The boy looked startled, then focused back on the difficult writings in his book. The boy started shaking violently, clearly scared by something, and asking what was happening. His mother and Helen looked worried, and then someone shouted that there were bandits. In response to the threat, one of the warriors commanded everyone to prepare to fight, while the blonde woman used her magic to command the wind and gather protection. His mother quickly shielded the young boy, pressing them both against the wooden wall for cover. Arrows started flying toward them from the attackers. A powerful blast of swirling energy erupted from the ground, repelling the incoming projectiles. The child peered out, still being protected by his mother. Jasmine, using her speed, easily dodged or intercepted attacks near the wagons. A man wearing armor cracked a wooden beam with his hand, showing his strength while surrounded by the dark energy. Another armored man was holding a spear firmly, and a red-haired warrior prepared his own large spear for combat. A small drop of blood appeared where an arrow struck, and then Jasmine was shown calmly removing an arrow from her leg. Jasmine was surrounded by arrows, some stuck in her body, but she still held her bow steady, showing immense resilience. Jasmine then made a swift jump, landing softly on the ground despite the ongoing attack. She then aimed her bow with fierce, glowing eyes, ready to retaliate. Peeking over the barrier, the child and his mother looked terrified as someone declared, "Damn it." Looking up, they realized they were completely surrounded by figures atop the ridge. Arrows were seen hitting the cover of their wagons, while outside, Other members of their party drew their bows against the surrounding enemy archers. The bandits were revealed, hiding in the grass with sinister, greedy smiles. A close-up showed a huge axe and the muscular chest of what looked like the bandit leader, wearing a necklace. With a loud thump, a massive axe was thrown and buried itself into the earth, right where someone was standing, followed by the leader saying they made a pretty good catch, boys. The leader showed a wide, cruel smile, then gave a chilling instruction to leave only the women and the kid alive and not to leave any scars on them. The focus was on the muscular bandit leader, showing off his scarred chest and green pendant necklace. The reason for keeping them unharmed was made clear: damaged goods would only sell for less money. A thought crosses someone's mind that they have been living in a sheltered world for too long. The surrounding darkness hints at a harsh reality beginning to break through. A man with a terrifying grin and a wild expression loomed large, his jagged teeth showing in a disturbing smile. His eyes were wide with intense, unsettling glee as he looked down. A group of rugged-looking men, one clearly the leader with a muscular build and wild adornments, stand ready for a fight. The leader firmly grasps his weapon, telling his companions to gather and guard while making a grim promise to train someone well. Someone realized that every world seems to have its share of bad people. A sense of damage was felt in the darkness. The captor then declared he would train the baby so well that it would beg to stay with him in the end. A different voice cried out, urging the mother to hurry and heal the father, as there was something wrong with her. The father shouts to gather and guard, while an attacker promises to train the baby so well that they will beg to stay. The father then notices that he is at a disadvantage against multiple opponents. Someone was grasping an object, and a young boy looked up with a fierce and determined expression. He gripped something tightly in his hand while his mother urged him to listen carefully. The woman, with wide, worried eyes, seemed to be in shock or deep distress. A clear plea was directed towards someone to hurry and heal the mother. The man told Arthur to gather and guard while he dealt with the remaining opponents. He promised Arthur that after the mother healed, she could fend off the leader, but he worried about protecting them both. The enemy shouted for everyone to gather and guard against the disadvantage they face. Someone threatened the mother, saying they would train the baby so well the baby would want to stay with them. A young boy with wide blue eyes peered out from behind something while a man with blonde hair and a mask prepared to shoot an arrow. The man shouted a command to gather and guard, then promised to train the boy well. An archer let loose an arrow that flew with great speed toward its target. A voice shouted to gather and guard as a loud rumble echoed around them. The sound of rumbling filled the air as someone was aggressively training another person to fight. The one being trained was warned to stop struggling, as the trainer promised to make them beg to stay later. The fight continued with loud cracks as a figure struck down, sending dust and debris flying. Another man tried to defend himself with a glowing staff, but was clearly struggling against the powerful attacks. The earth wall rose up dramatically, showing many figures scrambling along its steep sides. Below the massive structure, the ground dropped off into a dark void, emphasizing the great height. The rumble of objects flying between the tall cliffs shook the very air. The father gathered his family, urging them to prepare for danger. The father shouts at his son, Arthur, to gather and guard while menacing figures approach them. He urgently tells Arthur to take his mother down the trail to safety after she heals, as he has to fight the leader alone. A fierce woman with long blonde hair strikes out with a sharp object while another woman watches in fear from behind. Below, two masked men, one holding a knife, prepare for a confrontation. A very strong man with a fur collar and an axe roared as he charged toward the fight. He threatened to make someone stay with him through intense training. The archer takes a position high up and lets an arrow fly. A large man with powerful arms manages to block the incoming attack with a sharp move. The man in black forcefully kicked one of the attackers, sending him crashing down onto the rocky ground with a loud impact. Another enemy, holding a bow, looked on with wide eyes at the sudden turn of events. The captor threatened the child with harsh training if the family did not comply. The child's father insisted that the mother and the baby leave immediately after she used her healing spell. The attackers continued their assault, their blades striking with force against the ground. One fighter was slammed down hard, hitting the cracked earth with a loud smack. One enemy prepared to strike down with a curved sword while the other man fought hard to hold another downed person beneath him. The first man yelled to stop struggling, promising to train the baby so well that they would want to stay. The father urged the boy to gather and guard while shouting at someone to stop struggling. He promised to train the struggling person so well that they would beg to stay in the end. The attacker was hit with a sharp object that pierced deeply into his side. The man gritted his teeth, clearly in pain from the wound he just sustained. A woman with dark hair, clearly ready for a fight, nodded firmly as she prepared her next move. She was determined to hold her ground against any threat that came her way. The fight continued near the overturned carts, with a woman fighting some lizard-like creatures and other attackers. In a swift movement, the young woman landed a brutal slash across an enemy's face. With a powerful slash, the fighter moved quickly between the attackers. Blood splattered as the enemies were struck down by the swift attack. The fight intensified as the muscular man slammed down, creating a massive impact on the rocky ground. The red-haired figure struggled beneath the powerful crushing force. Someone took a fast step forward, showing determination in their eyes while gripping a sharp weapon. The person with red hair lunged ahead, ready to strike with great force. The fighter was struck multiple times with sharp objects, causing blood to spray out from the wounds. These swift attacks were delivered with great force, indicating a desperate struggle. The man with red hair and an eye patch seemed strained as he gripped something tightly above him. Down below, a figure dressed in black lunged forward while holding curved blades. The attackers moved in, one delivering a slash while another tried to stab the struggling man. The woman with the dark hair and horns seemed to have been stabbed, blood spraying from her head. A dark eye with a red pupil glares intensely. Elsewhere, a man with blonde hair and exaggerated features wields a glowing whip towards another person who is clearly terrified. The fight was intense as one man's whip cracked out, knocking another man back with a heavy impact. A dark figure was also seen flying through the air, separated from their boots by the force of the sudden attack. The villain aggressively tells the struggling captive to stop resisting, promising to train them so well they will want to stay in the end. The man demanded that the child stop struggling, promising to train them well enough that they would eventually want to stay with him. He mentioned a disadvantage against their opponents and declared that a change was coming. The man gathers himself and unleashes a powerful attack, with loud sounds indicating rapid whips striking near his opponents who are trying to dodge. He then aggressively demands that his family gather and guard, asserting his control over the situation. The man, bleeding slightly near his eye, gritted his teeth with a fierce expression while his enemies tried to surround him. He used his whip-like weapon to swiftly dodge and strike at the shadowy figures attacking him. The fighter realized that the woman was at a disadvantage because of the opponent's longer reach. The narrator wondered if being a fighter alone would be enough to change things. The young boy worried about whether he could win against a grown-up augmenter with his current small body. Suddenly, there was a loud crash as something impactful happened below. A huge attack smashed through the wooden structure, sending debris flying everywhere. The mother, clutching her young child, was thrown violently backwards from the impact. The man struggled as he was held close, and an unseen opponent threatened them, demanding they gather and guard. He fiercely told the person to stop struggling, promising intense training that would make them want to stay. Blood poured from the man's mouth, showing his severe injury. His wife cried out in alarm for her honey as their young son looked on with worry. A man loudly declared he would train the baby so well that the child would beg to stay with him in the end. This was happening while another person warned that they were at a disadvantage against the opponents. The enemy gathered his strength, ready to attack again. He warned the boy that he would train him until he begged to stay. The young man urgently told his mother to quickly heal their father, who was bleeding. The mother looked distressed and worried while the father was being held up. The young woman cried out that there was something wrong with her mother, but she hesitated when told she had to leave. The child worriedly asked why the mother was not healing the father. The mother quickly reassured the child that she was fine and her injuries were not life-threatening. The man, looking menacing with blood on his mouth, told the crying woman not to worry and to do her best. The father tells Arthur to listen carefully to what he is about to say next. He explains that after the mother heals, the bad men will go after her, but he can handle their leader if he does not have to worry about protecting the two children. The father insisted that his son take his mother back down the trail and not stop once the healing spell was finished. The boy protested loudly, refusing to leave his father and insisting he could still fight. The injured man told Arthur to gather and guard, threatening to train the baby so well that the child would want to stay. Arthur, seeing his father injured, urged his mother to hurry and heal him immediately. The figure in black gently tapped the person with brown hair. It looked like some kind of glowing light floated around them in the dark space. The father looked down at Arthur Lewin and told him to listen carefully. He said he knew Arthur could fight, which is why he was trusting him to protect his mother. A drop of blood trickled from someone's mouth in the darkness, with a quiet thought of an appearing. The man sternly told Arthur to protect the baby inside the woman. The scene starts with a moment of rest after some excitement, where a man holds a laughing woman close, while a child sits nearby. The woman, looking tired, reassures someone that she will be fine soon. A serious thought comes up. The boy recalls that his mother was pregnant at that time. The boy remembers that he was planning to tell someone named Cyrus about the pregnancy, but something interrupted. A fighter with an injury around his mouth is shown close up. Then hands are shown grabbing something. The determined young boy looks up and firmly states that he will protect his mom. He seals his promise with a simple, yet serious, "I promise." The chapter title card appears, showing a sword over a broken crown, marking the story's progression. The scene shifts to a younger version of the boy, who tells someone named Art to get ready. The boy's parents are seen with their companions, and a man observes that the enemy side has 4 mages ready. The enemy leader shouts in anger and then commands his men not to let the mother escape, pointing out they also have a healer. The mother and child are being urged to run away quickly by the father figure. The young boy worries about his father, pleading with him not to die, while someone urges them to hurry. A fierce-looking red-haired warrior prepares for a fight, while in the background, the family is trying to escape. An attacker dashes toward the mother and child with sharp weapons, making the mother look worried. The father figure intercepts the attacker, holding him down while telling the others to get away. The mother and child manage to climb up the rocky terrain, escaping the immediate danger zone. A masked enemy holds a weapon close, while below, the child's focused blue eye is shown in reaction. The child's intense gaze shows he is ready for action, just as a massive force is unleashed. A powerful impact happens as the child's body takes a hit while protecting the mother. The child grits his teeth in pain from the impact, causing small cracks around him. The child's weapon breaks with a loud crack, showing the severity of the blow. The masked attacker is surprised by the child's resilience and asks how that was possible. An arrow snaps as it hits something, and the female warrior tells Arthur not to stop. The mother looks on in shock and concern as the fight continues around them. A thought flashes through someone's mind. Something is definitely wrong with the situation. The enemy group is gathered, and someone notes that they expected 4 mages, but the count seems off. An enemy jumps down toward the mother, but Arthur quickly intervenes, blocking the attack. Another enemy attacks, but this time, the father figure is hit hard by an axe swing. With 3 enemies dealt with, someone demands to know where the last one is. The angry enemy leader screams to forget the original plan and orders that no one should be left alive. The young Arthur looks up, wondering who the leader was talking to, sensing another threat. A swirling mass of blue mana begins to form in the air, creating a distinct rumble. Arthur sees the developing magic and reacts with a sharp shit. The blue mana swirls into a massive ball on top of the cliff, with the remaining enemies caught near it. Arthur is shown bracing himself while holding onto something close. A huge wave of blue energy blasts outward with a massive shoom. The mother and child are running away from the blast, but Arthur realizes that even if he dodges with mana, his mom won't be fast enough. Arthur tries to use his speed, gritting his teeth in frustration and shouting, "Damn it." Arthur quickly turns, pushing his mother away, and apologizes internally for the bruises he might cause her. Arthur uses his body to push his mother out of the path of the massive magical attack, while she screams in terror. Arthur is pulled into the magical blast, thinking that if he couldn't escape himself, he would at least take the mage down with him. With all his might, Arthur throws himself and whatever he grabbed into the attack. The attack impacts with a loud splash. As the water subsides, one of the enemies is stabbed by a thrown dagger with a cry of pain. Arthur is shown being pulled upwards by a mana string, while the enemy who is stabbed falls away. Arthur hopes that the mana string he created will hold, as he is suspended over the battle below. Arthur's hand grips something tightly, feeling the strain as he pulls himself up. A powerful surge of energy, possibly lightning, hits the ground near Arthur as he struggles to hold on. An enemy mage reaches out desperately to grab the edge of the cliff, but their grip fails with a crack. The mage tumbles down the cliff face, seemingly defeated. Another combatant raises a large weapon, ready to strike down. A massive, fist-shaped rock formation slams down into the ground where the battle was taking place, leaving Arthur standing near its base. Arthur, suspended by the mana string, is seen falling toward the ground, still attached to something above. The young boy, slightly bruised but alive, looks up with a small, gentle smile. He thinks to himself that it looks like everyone else will be okay, letting out a small sob. In the darkness, Arthur reflects sadly that he always wanted to be an older brother.